grave if it's mine to choose. Feels like there's nothing left for me to lose. I'll take my blame. How many times I've got to tell you I'm more caught up in bad advice? So many times I've had to hear you say, you know what you gotta do. I used to hang on to words and make my sting if you stung me first, but I passed upon needing you to understand my views. It gets lonely, but I've learned by now there's more emptiness in the smiles you're forced to wear. I dig my grave if it's not to choose. Feels like there's nothing left for me to lose. I dig my grave. There's that obsession again with everything going to plan. Sometimes I hear the fear in your voice, and then I think of the poisonous words of mention. The only way that we can connect.
Hey everyone, Greg Staley here from Diverge Media. Thanks for joining the live show tonight. We're just going to bring in our other partner here. This is Broderick Pfister, if you haven't met him, one of the other co-owners and contributors here at Diverge Media. How's it going?
I'm good. You?
Good. So we got exciting stuff on the horizon here. So I just finished opening announcements, everyone. I just finished bumper car maintenance order. So we should have that in the next week here. We're getting our t-shirt design this Friday, and hopefully we'll get that order in the next few weeks as well. So merch is on the way. But the big news besides that, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and make sure you hit the bell notification, because we are going to be going live quite a bit in the next few months. So Diverge Media is planning on moving out of Ontario to Saskatchewan. And as a result, we've decided that we need to make the most of our time that we still have left here in Ontario, which means that we are going to be live at many, many different rallies, demonstrations, businesses opening, things of that nature. So keep an eye. Make sure you hit the bell notification so you can have that data. But let's get into it tonight. We are going to be talking about the Leamington restaurant that defied the Premier Ford's lockdowns. A crowd amassed of a couple hundred people on less than 24 hours notice from independent MPP Randy Hillier. So we're going to go through that, but we got some other interesting stuff. Broderick's got information on it's blowing up right now. 14 different MLAs have come out against Jason Kenney's restriction plans. We got talk of a new 16 now. Jeez. And that's just in the last couple. Was it 15? So we'll be talking about that. We also have U.S. alcohol consumption trends. The ACES pandemic tracker system for Ontario, we will be bringing that data in for your review as well. And then we are going to go into vaccine no-shows. So that is becoming an issue. So let's get into it, and let's start on the MLA story. So let's bring that up, Broderick.
Okay. Do you want me to screen share, or are we not doing that tonight?
We can screen share this one. I think it's screen share, get it out there, and let's talk about it. So when you're saying against restrictions, you're referring to lockdown restrictions then?
Yeah, it's the renewed lockdown restrictions that they just put them back into step one, phase one, whatever. They're calling it step one there. They call it everything different everywhere. It's supposed to confuse people, I guess. Essentially, just the day after the return to step one restrictions in Alberta, 15 MLAs signed a letter that revolts against Alberta's backpedaling of restrictions, and in general their lockdown restrictions. And then an additional MLA, Garth Roswell, added his name to the list earlier today. In the letter said, just a little snippet of it, after 13 painstaking months of the COVID-19 public health restrictions, we do not support the additional restrictions imposed on Albertans yesterday. And we will continue to advocate for a transparent path forward that provides certainty to Alberta families, communities, and businesses. Previously, the Premier has said that he expected people, including his members of his caucus and party, to disagree with the decision to return to tighter public health measures. He said he's welcomed a wide-ranging debate on how best to rise a challenge. How best to challenge the pandemic. He asked that it be debated and informed by facts. Today, even NDP health critic David Shepherd called for Kenny to expel any MLAs from the caucus who seek to undermine public health messages. He said the Premier must send a message that casting down on medical advice is unacceptable. That's what the article said.
Oh, so yes. So let's let's go for full draconian like health leaders being basically in charge of and this is basically what we have is they've said that in Ontario anyways, Premier Ford, if you're going to go against your medical officer, you might as well throw a neck around your rope and jump off a bridge, like a literal quote from our Premier here. A rope around your neck. And so I mean, we're open to a debate. I'm sure you are. As long as you have the right opinions, I'm open to a debate, Broderick. So
Springer sharing stuff.
Do you know how many MLAs there is in Alberta that are United Conservative Party? That was the only thing I was curious about. Like, how much of the party does that represent there? Because that seems like quite a few. So see if you can find that, but let's move on here. So that's happening in Alberta right now. You got MLAs speaking out against the lockdowns. Thank goodness it's happening all over the place, and it's been happening for a while. Former medical officer of Ontario, Richard Shabas, was also somebody who spoke out against lockdowns. Roman Baber highlighted this and went through the information and data. But let's go through the ACES pandemic system, everyone. We pull that up for everyone here. So this is an Ontario acute care surge monitor, and I'm going to read about the actual system itself so you can understand why this is a valuable tool. ACES is a surveillance tool for Ontario's local public health agencies and Ministry of Health that monitors in real time visit volumes and potential disease outbreaks at participating hospitals. Currently, more than 95% of Ontario's hospitals share data with ACES. Pretty effective tool. No patient identifiers are collected. Number of registrations. Okay, so anyways, we come down here. We're going to go emergent admissions, meaning these are people that are being admitted to emerge. So that is more, that's not an emergency department visit. That's a selective because that means there's more likely to be a poorer outcome if you're being admitted. Not that that's going to be the case, but this here is the snapshot of all of Ontario. Now, you can see up here number of patients and surge status last hour on all hospitals. So if it's 50% or below, it is green. 50 to 70, yellow. 70 to 90, orange. 90 or equal, greater than 90 or equal to 90 will be red. So when we get the full picture here of Ontario being overrun, and this is what they're painting, less than 5% of all ICU patients are COVID patients. We look at this map. You see all this green? Few red dots, few yellow, and maybe one orange. Okay, so this is the case. Yeah, we have overrun hospitals. We have a few, but predominantly the picture looks good. So that's Ontario's surge status, the last hour, and this is the ACES, Ontario Acute Care Surge Monitor, and that's 95% of hospitals participate in that in real time. So we bring that up, and then we come back. All right, so that's the case in Ontario. Now, everybody's talking about Quebec, and I'm seeing the jockeying for position to try to get the narrative around these nations and these are not these nations, but these states that have opened up. They're trying to get the narrative out that it's a bad idea. I just heard on the radio today, apparently truckers are afraid because Texas is open, and so it's like you find maybe a couple of truckers that are afraid, and then you have your story. But this is what they're talking about, trying to paint that narrative like Texas is a scary place. But here's the reality: 17 consecutive days of decreased cases, decreases in COVID cases in Texas, and the lowest hospitalization since October. Now, when we go and look at the actual data here, now this is March 2nd. If we have right here, Governor Abbott opens 100% of Texas rescinds the mask mandate. That was on the 2nd of March. So now we're going to look at the data here. New confirmed cases, 2nd of March, right? All going down. New probable cases, where are we here? All going down. New fatalities in Texas, all going down. Now, I don't think particularly that Texas is doing anything special. I do think perhaps like I need to look into how they're diagnosing the COVID patients now. But the reality is, I think they just caught the downtrend. This is a seasonal thing, predominantly hits in the seasonality of an influenza virus, just like a lot of respiratory illnesses. And I think that's what they just timed it out, and they've lifted the restrictions. And this has happened in many other states that have opened up, and they're getting their lives back. Meanwhile, Ontario feels like a police state. And I have never been so glad in my life that I've made the decision that we're moving. Ontario has become unaffordable for us to live in. The average home price, even in Windsor now, according to Remax, is over $300,000 in Ontario. So this idea,
that's so absurd for Windsor. Yeah. And what's the difference with just over the border in Detroit?
So you can get a home for like $3-4 grand, but I'm not sure you want those homes. Bullet holes pre-installed. No, some of those homes that are $3 to $6 grand, they're not going to be pleasant homes. But I've actually had this conversation a bunch of times of like, I wonder if you could buy property in Detroit. Does anybody think Detroit's going to make a turn? The land's so cheap. And we've had talks about buying up plots of land in Detroit. I don't think it's ever going to happen.
I've heard stories of people saying Elon Musk should buy up Detroit, or
make Detroit the electric city. It's no longer Scranton. We're taking back. All right, so let's move on here back to business. Have an answer
to your question, though.
You do. How many MLAs in Alberta then?
62 are held by the United Conservative Party out of 87. So it's about a quarter of his.
Quarter of the MLAs are coming forward and saying we don't agree. So that's, for reference, that's a pretty big deal. Yeah. All right, you ready to move into the next one? Let's go straight up. Let's go U.S. alcohol consumption trends. All right. So obviously, pandemic. Oh, I can't even say that. Pandemic quotes. All right. Forcing people to stay at home, lockdown. They're going to drink more. And people are upset. They're bored. They're stressed. And they are drinking more. And so now we look at the data, pull it up. This is from USA Today, but this is from a Journal of American Medicine report. But alcohol consumption has increased by 14% as compared to a year ago. Now, this was from October 6, 2020, so not sure where those numbers are now, and this is American, but they're seeing a 14% in alcohol consumption, including 17% women, for women, and also the study showed 41% increase in heavy drinking for women. So do you think this is obviously it's an unintended consequences, but do you think it's an understated unintended consequences?
I'd say yes. I mean, I was just reading today on Twitter that people still can't wrap it around their brains that the alcohol, like the LCBO or the beer store, are essential goods in this case of a lockdown. Just based on the terms that people have alcohol dependency and it could create another health crisis in a general sense. So, but just people being bored or sad or whatever during a lockdown, depressed, I think it's understandable, but I don't think many people realize the impacts.
Well, the reason I bring this up, it's like, well, people are like, oh, okay, alcohol consumption. Entire papers in the medical profession will be written just on this topic. By the time this starts to wrap up, there'll be entire papers written just on alcohol consumption. The reason for that is, and I say understated problem, we all know that alcohol consumption's increased as a result of the lockdowns. But increased alcohol consumption leads to increased health issues. later on in life. And so this is the question I have. If there's becomes chronic use that sustains itself through this, what does that look like as an effect on the healthcare system as an unintended consequence of your measures? I really don't know. So that's kind of where I come from with that question. What does that look like 10, 20 years from now? Do we have a bunch more alcoholics in the country? I hate to say that, but I mean, the job prospect thing is going to look rough for the next, few years at least, even if things were to turn around. And it's still going to be a while before the job market will rebound and everything goes back to a semblance of normal. And that's if there was the desire to do all of that and they did everything right now. So I don't know.
Well, it's true. It's not just the consumption. Domestic abuse has increased dramatically also.
So we talked about that. Tim Ballard of Operation Underground Railroad, early on in the pandemic, he goes, listen, it's a 99.97% survival or something for people under 65. And his organization, for reference, rescues children from trafficking. And so he goes, this is happening. And as a result, the abusers are at home more with the abused. And it's happening more and more. And so I think just in Canada alone, it was Kids Help Phone went from 2 million to 4 million plus phone calls in 2020. Double. And that's just Canada. So that's another unintended consequence. You're forcing. So school, after school sports, different things like that, where you have coaches, teachers, just caring adults that are going to be around that could intercede in abusive cases. That's completely gone as a result. Unintended consequence. So, yeah, absolutely love that comment. Thanks, DL, for bringing that up. Let's move on to the next one. We're going to go. Where are we going with this? Sorry, go ahead.
Did you hear the city of Victoria, British Columbia? They made a free toll line that you can call, that you can listen to various types of music, nature sounds, and all this other jazz. And I think it was Andrew Lawton who tweeted out today. He said, does the city of Victoria know that all these resources can be accessed on something we call the internet?
Do you know if you look up free music right now?
Funded by the taxpayers.
You know what it's like? It's like that.
It's a good gesture, but it's stupid. It's so dumb.
It's like that episode of That 70s Show. I've taken your entire living room and I moved everything 1 inch to the left. It's the same idea.
Yeah.
All right.
In a general sense. All right. What's next?
What's next? All right. Moving on. We have, I want to bring this up, but the motion carries. This is something we covered a little bit a while ago, maybe a week and a half. But the motion carried for Public Health Canada will have to provide all the info and documents on Ebola virus transfer to the Wuhan lab after refusing to initially. So at the Special Committee on Canada-China Relations, the discussion was about the motion requesting all information. They put it in. Now this motion got approved, is my understanding. But basically, as the CBC story originally reported, and we must remember, there was a researcher who was removed by the RCMP from the highest security laboratory that Canada has for reasons that the government was unwilling to disclose. The intelligence remains secret. But we know that she was removed, sent one of the deadliest viruses on Earth and multiple varieties of it to maximize the genetic diversity and maximize what experimenters in China could do with it, to a laboratory in China that does dangerous gain-of-function experiments and that has links to the Chinese military. So we can't forget about that. That happened a year before this stuff kicked off. And it just kind of went by the wayside. But anyways, they opening up that investigation where they're going to have to give up the documents related to the transfer finally. So I thought that was important to keep in mind. But let's move on to the story I'm sure a lot of people want to know about. Leamington, and then I'll let you pry me on some questions from outside the box maybe I didn't think about.
Okay.
So Randy Hillier, independent MPP for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston, puts out a social media message to his followers and basically says, listen, this restaurant is opening called Family Kitchen in Leamington. They're opening against the law. He's expected to show up at 10:30. I think I see the message at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Decided I was going to go. get up at 5:45 in the morning, get out on the road. You know, I
How
get
far
there
was
for
that?
3 hours. So I get out and it's do the live stream. And by the time 10 o'clock's around, there's already like 100 people there. And then it starts filling out as 10:30, 10:45 rolls around. And it's like 200 to 300 people there. Now, the thing that I took away from this like experience of being there was crazy to me that the crowd amassed like that. Now, I was talking with a local and I said, "Are you surprised that this many people showed up in Leamington?" She said, "Not at all. People are fed up." And so I thought that was interesting. But as somebody pointed out in the live stream, Leamington is an agriculture town, has been hit even harder than most as a result of the COVID measures. And so maybe that has something to do with it. But if you watch our live stream, and I highly recommend it just to get an idea of where Canadians' mindset is. So there's one thing, if the media can say whatever, the reason we do the live streams that we do is so that people have firsthand accounts. And then we do our edited video separate. There's 200 to 300 people there, really good turnout, and car after car after car is supportive. It's just like honks in support nonstop. There was maybe 4 counter protesters, 4 to 10 people at the height of things. And there's a few altercations, but what I seen by the end of it was one lady was counter protesting, was very scared. Somebody crossed the road with a sign that was supportive of this business, and ended up having a prolonged conversation with her. And I thought that's exactly what this needs. This country needs is people having conversations with each other that don't agree. And a couple people flipped off through the finger. There's one lady that was very over the top. You're the reason we're in lockdown again, you pieces of garbage kind of thing. And basically, how dare you, you're awful human beings. But I'd say that was like 2-3 people in the course of 3-4 hours that I was there. So stuck around till 2 p.m. No police. The other thing that happened as a result, we're in Leamington, and we get word. Somebody goes, well, somebody else is kind of encouraged by what's going on down here, and they've opened up their restaurant. And so just up the road was another restaurant named called Tortilla Leamington, and we went up there and we verified that they were doing indoor dining as well. Popped back to the scene and finished covering it up there. But overall, I mean, firefighter was honking. I seemed supportive. Like they could have just been honking. I don't know. I mentioned that in the article. I worded it in a way that's very neutral because I don't know if it was supportive or not. But spotted in Leamington, I linked them in the article. They actually have the fire truck driving by. It's linked in our article that we released today, honking as they drive by the group of hundreds of people in support of this business. Ambulance as well. many transport trucks. Many cars, a lot of people were revving and burning out tires and stuff like that as they drove by in support, but the police did not show up. I'm going to follow up in a few days here, but I imagine there's some hypersensitivity around that restaurant being open. So would see a social media post within a pretty quick amount of time if something happened, but we will follow up in a few days to make sure that they didn't get fined. But
Generally, police like to show up a few days later and fine because they don't want to be in an uncomfortable situation or whatever on the scene.
I mean, I don't agree with enforcing the orders. We'll make that clear. But to show up on the scene when there's less people, that just makes logical sense as a police officer. Like, what am I going to do as a police officer? Do I show up when there's 300 people in an altercation that could put me at risk as insured? Like, you know what I mean? I'm not saying there will be an altercation, but it's like it could put me at risk, and it definitely increases the chance that there's something that might happen. So you show up when you don't have all that environmental risk. So that's why they do it. I'm not saying I agree with it, but that is why they do it. And so I didn't expect them to show up after the crowd showed up, but I do suspect there might be a fine on the way. It seems there needs to be a tipping point here. There's a lot of businesses that have started standing up, but it needs to happen in unison because right now there's, only a few nails are sticking up and the government's the hammer, and there's enough hammer right now that go around and hit all the nails. So everybody needs to stand up at once so that these people don't stick out when they do it, which is why I thought it was so fascinating that this other business opened up down the street as a result of what happened down at Family Kitchen in Leamington.
I want to see like neighborhood COVID block parties. Just people at whole streets gathering. It'd be cool.
Well,
Kinda like
here's the
Edinburgh,
thing.
but-
I mean, well, people hear stuff like this and they think that's irresponsible. You don't care, but we've been going over this data for a year and a bit, and it's like, look, we just looked at the Texas data. They lifted everything. Their cases are declining. Their hospitalizations are declining. Their deaths are declining. Sweden never locked down. They have less cases per million, less deaths per million than the U.S., Italy. Go down the list, and then like when we learn about Italy. They had epidemic influenza levels 2013 to 2016. They had more excess deaths in 2016 than the Second World War. They have an aged population, a smoking population. Northern Italy, I found out, is actually referenced as the China of Europe because of how heavy the pollution is in Northern Italy. And ironically, not surprisingly, that is where the majority of the deaths occurred. So, and another thing is coronaviruses. I'm going through a few audiobooks right now that are just shredding my mind, but coronavirus, if you test it in hospital, like any coronavirus, you're going to find it. In a nursing home, it would kill up to 8% of nursing home patients, any coronavirus. So this is, I'm listening to Dr. Bhakti, her book. I just went through another one. I can't recommend this book enough. Whoever, if you're in this live stream and you're the one who recommended it to me, thank you so much, because I'm going to go back and write a bunch of articles based on this book recommendation. But The Moth and the Iron Lung. Who's it by? I want to reference this for people here that are interested. This will totally change your viewpoints on polio and on vaccinations in general. Potentially, it depends on how you take in the information. But The Moth in the Iron Lung by Forrest Moretti. And so this book, he lays out at the same time that polio is moving through the world, they're using literal lead arsenic and DDT and things like this, and they're spraying it everywhere. They had there was certain things that were going on at the time. There was a gypsy moth invasion in the United States that was killing crops like crazy, and so they amped up these campaigns with these chemicals, and understandably they had these chemicals that were working to spread the stop of this gypsy moth invasion that was killing all their crops, but they didn't think there was any long-term consequences. And what the book kind of insinuates and suggests, he goes, when all these spraying of these chemicals stopped, so did too polio. And one of the few places that this disease still exists is in India, where they're the biggest producer of DDT. So this book just shattered my perception on polio. And here's another thing. We have that image of the iron lung in our head, right? They were everywhere, and so many people were on these iron lungs. And yeah, there was like less than 11,000 in the entire United States. They were very expensive. Most hospitals can afford more than one or two. And they had one function. So you got a hospital budget, your shoestring, right? It's maybe not. So it's just crazy. Like when you go through the stuff that was going on, no DT. Okay, you want to know the crap? Trust the science, guys. Doctors and science would never lie. No flies on me because I got my DDT. That was promoted by science, everyone. Kids were promoted to run through clouds of DDT clouds. You want to get the clouds. They're eating lunches with DDT spray all around. They were dusting this crap from airplanes, dropping it, pounds and pounds of this stuff on fruits and things that kids were eating. And then, so what they think happened was that it weakened the linings of the intestines and the immune system so much so that these viruses were normally dealt with by the human body's immune system were now suddenly working their way into the human body in ways they had never been able to. And they believe that's kind of the insinuation in the book of this is what drove the polio epidemic. And they basically say, listen, it's extreme narcissism that they wanted to attribute the decreases in polio to vaccines rather than the absent or getting rid of all these chemicals that were known to have all these cancer-causing agents as time went on. So it's a very interesting book.
Would you see?
Sorry, go ahead.
Would you see any parallels to today in that?
100%. I ended up yelling at the car as I'm listening to the commentary on this book, because I'm listening to the commentary on it, talking about what they did, the type of things that were going on, and the things that were missed. And it's yeah, I mean, tons of things that overlap, but in general, that book is so much like the narrative twisting that happened then it's like, okay, they did the same type. It's same but different, as my Muay Thai coach used to say.
You could
Same
say,
but different.
You could say the parallels would be the crop spraying and the
No, not even crop spraying.
well,
More so the scientific community's handling of things and the
yeah,
ignorance of certain things and the things they ignore, and how powerful human psychology is, and how much groupthink can override independent think. And it takes
but
people speaking up along the way, and then eventually you get somebody prestigious enough that might come along because enough people have gotten their head beat down that they go, well, I think there is something to that. And it takes a long time.
well, I would
People
say
don't like to think about that.
the crop spraying and the weakened immune systems is kind of like staying at home and not going outside, and not going out your house a lot, and a weakened immune system.
Well, they had extreme. Sorry, just read Manipulism, the weapon of guilt. I'll check that out. Appreciate it. I'm going on an audiobook binge. I killed almost 2 audiobooks on the trip to Leamington. So,
The old Timbers was saying on Facebook, I wonder if Ford put in these strict lockdowns because it keeps moving up, because the taxpayers started standing up in Ontario and asking questions.
I mean,
We
it's
talked
the
about
question.
that
Like,
the lockdown.
I think we'll move on to that. Let's talk about that. We'll keep this one short tonight. I'm personally exhausted. I had a really long day yesterday, but yeah, we can talk about that. Sorry, I'm just reading through the comments here. Florida and Texas have way bigger population than all of Canada. Where's the body bags? Yeah, exactly. So bigger population actually double in less cases. So one of the things in Dr. Baccarat's book that she talks about is just the utter manipulation of the PCR test, and that when you have low prevalence of the virus itself, an easy way to increase the appearance of more of the virus is to increase testing. And so this is familiar. We know that the PCR is it is pretty much useless for what they're using it for. ICU, oh, this is what I wanted to bring up. Can we bring that up? Okay, so this is independent MPP Roman Baber. This was data that he got from our health system, and ICU bed occupancy rate was 80% at the time. It was taken on April 1st. So, or published on April 1st. I'm not sure when it was taken. ICU ventilator bed occupancy was 49%. And as our other correspondent pointed out, Paul Staley, it's 4.7%, I think, is the number that are actually COVID patients in Ontario. So the variants are taking over the hospitals is nonsense. Again, there is a couple overrun hospitals in Canada or in Ontario, and there always is. If you look at the CBC reports, there's 40 hospitals from January to June of 2019 that were over 100% occupancy for the entire year. So this is not a new problem. In fact, I would argue that I bet you a bunch of our hospitals have probably been in better shape as a result of cancellations of things. They've had probably more available occupancy than normal. But that's what's going on. The PCR test was designed for DNA identification. Yeah, Gary Moss, the creator himself, said, don't use this for viral illness, and we're using it to diagnose viral illness. But what do you want to close out here? You got one more story here, which is the Alberta nuclear story, which I actually find interesting. We'll talk about the importance of it after you introduce it, and I'll give my opinion on it.
Before we get on to that, do you want to just kind of cover the non-essential goods thing?
Yeah, non-essential goods. So if send me a picture. I'm going to pull this up here.
For me, working at a big box store, and I don't like name dropping because I need my job, but I do sometimes. I work at a big box store in Canada. Probably guess which one it is. And it's going to be non-essential goods starting tomorrow. So I have to walk into work to a really strange surprise, more so than usual, like that. And I'm going to have to tell people they can't buy certain things, and they're going to be like, "What can I buy?" If they didn't know the news or whatever. It's going to be very frustrating for a customer service employee. But essentially, it's just going to be foods. I'm assuming some of infants. You're going to have health and beauty, cosmetics, and pharmacy.
Can anybody explain?
Like it's just everything will be roped off by skids, plastic wrap, whatever they have to do. fencing.
Can anybody explain to me how that makes any sense? How this is meant to reduce spread? What's the concept? It just people will shop less? And who the hell decides what's essential for me? I'm sorry. This pisses me off. I don't know what else to say other than that. You're going to tell me I don't need a t-shirt? What if I only got one and it's got a hole in it? You know what I mean? Oh, I don't need pans? What if the Teflon's coming out of the pan every time I cook? Like, you don't get to deter. Oh, but it's okay, Greg. You can still order it on Amazon. Oh, that's right, Doug. I know you love those big stores that can afford those lobbyists, don't you? The Walmarts and the Amazons. If they can afford a lobbyist, you'll hear them out.
Thing is,
I'm so done with this premiere.
Wasn't it the news before that Walmart executives of some sort had their hands in with the Ontario government, and that's why they hadn't done this sooner? So I'm wondering what they did to piss off Doug Ford. Maybe I don't know, but
nothing. It's just
maybe it's just public health officials really just
why aren't
pushing
you sectioning off these non-essentials at big box stores?
Yeah.
The logistics just wouldn't work.
Yeah, the logistics wouldn't work is what he said about the doing this before. And then he just turned his tune. This dude has no moral courage. Give me a break. The dude has no backbone. He basically said, I don't want to run the province. The doctors run the province. I might as well throw a wreck around my like, dude, you're a wimp. Get out of office and let somebody who has some backbone actually run the province. I'm sorry. I'm done being stepping around this so nicely. This dude is destroying this province. Absolutely destroying it because he refuses to go, guys, we overreacted. It's going to be okay, Karen. It will be okay, Ken. I know we're scared. And I'm making light of this, but like, there's people scared, legitimately scared, very scared, and we need to acknowledge that and be compassionate. But at the end of the day, it's not compassionate to destroy the economy today, raise taxes tomorrow, devalue the currency at the same time because you're printing money like crazy so that you can give like kumbaya and pats on the back so you can look good for the next year or two while you destroy my family's future. Sorry, I'm done. You had a full year to get to this point, figure out other accommodations. Remember those 500 extra ICU beds he created? Okay, if you stuck every COVID patient in that hospital, theoretically, one hospital with just the extra beds, it still wouldn't even be full. But we're shutting down again? My kids, what future do they have if this continues? It's getting bad. It's bad already. The debt is out of control. You know what's coming? Higher taxes. Higher taxes, there's less jobs, which means there's going to be lower wages, which means lower standard of living. Do you know the United Nations predicting up to a 30% reduction in the quality of life in the United States alone? Sounds great, doesn't it? Let's keep locking down. Pats on the backs. Even if we were saving lives today, we're setting people up for absolute failure tomorrow. The amount of poverty we're going to create from these measures, the amount of people that are eating worse as a result of these measures, the overdoses, the suicides, the increases in alcohol consumption, smoking, vices, things like this. I'm done. Can we stop pretending that this is some virtuous battle you've incurred yourself into? That if you stand on the side of the government and you rally your cap and you say, we're doing the right thing. You're not. You're not, because even if you were today, you're looking at things in a vacuum and it's moronic. Call it for what it is. If you call for lockdowns today without a thought of tomorrow and the overall health of the system, which is your nation, which is your duty to the country and the province and the people. If you can't do that, you don't deserve the lead. That's my rant for the day.
Gotcha.
I'm sorry. I mean, I think about it all the time. I'm watching the future of this province slip away because this dude has no courage. Like, if you had courage, you come out and you say the things like, the data says less than 5% of all ICU is COVID related. The data says Texas opened up and they've had 17 consecutive days drop. The data says that 2015 and 2018, the Ontario Nursing Association fought in court against mandatory masking, and they found it not to be sufficient in protecting the nurse or the patient twice. That's what a leader would do, and then he'd take the heat. No, I might as well throw a rope around my neck. Get out of office, like frig's sakes. What are you doing? You were elected to represent people. That's your only job. And you just said, I'm not going to do it. Oh, it's scary. I wouldn't want to upset the apple cart. They'll just put down a section 22 anyways, and they'll just do what they want and make me look bad. That's leadership. Thanks, Doug.
Man, did you see the Ben Backus clip of, the CPAC reporter that last Thursday, who once spoke to Ford kind of really quickly before his briefing? It was sorry, I lost connection. It's so funny. He dubbed over. He's like, "So, Mr. Ford, are you going to be putting forward these restrictions? Is it going to be a lockdown? But it's going to be a lockdown. Well, it's not really a lockdown. It's a shutdown, boys." And it's just funny Canadian accent, but yeah, I get a kick out of this sometimes.
So right. we gotta get back to the plot here. I went nuclear instead of Alberta. Alberta to go nuclear. Back to the plot. Let's go. All right, storyline.
Not as advertised. Alberta is going nuclear, but is it worth the cost?
So just give us the 10,000 foot summary.
I'll give you a really quick summary. Within the next 10 years, these will be, or within the next decade, these will be available for them to start using. It's from a company called I'm losing. I might check that already. Nuclear. I believe it was nuclear. Yeah.
Nuclear. Is that what it is? Nuclear or something like that?
I can't believe I forgot that.
So my understanding of this is, there it is. My understanding is it's a new form of nuclear technology. They want to put it in Alberta. That gets all the conservatives excited because they say, "Hey, nuclear, we know that. That's clean and it's efficient, right?" But,
so it's new scale, and they're, instead of in a traditional reactor, they're small modular reactors called SMRs, and they're an alternative that can fit onto a semi-truck trailer. They only generate 200 to 300 megawatts of electricity for each module. Or sorry, not each module. That's what the article is. Yeah, for each of them. Yeah. A traditional reactor generates about 800. SMRs can be grouped into 4, 6, or 12 available from new scale. So you can have multiple ones at a facility up to 12. Four of them will generate 462 megawatts. 6 generates 920. Sorry. Okay. 4 generates 308. 6 generates 462, and 12 generates 924. When you do the math, when you do the math, it's 115.5 per module. So when you times that by 12, it doesn't make sense to make it to 924. But do you want me to go on the reasons?
No. Summary is just this. It's a new technology. They're smaller. It sounds good to people that are conservative because it's nuclear, but they cost more. And it sounds like it will continue to increase in cost, and it actually would mean it would basically, like, electricity wouldn't get cheaper as a result.
No, probably more expensive.
So this whole nuclear, it's cheap, and no, this new nuclear technology seems to be more expensive.
It's new, but it's old. It's a revamped or almost kind of refurbished old technology that's been tweaked and whatnot. The same type of reactors in the 50s and 60s are shut down to the economic penalty for the smaller size reactors. Yeah, those are in the US. They have a higher cost regardless of the tiny size, so it's not really, it's kind of counterproductive in that means. And one of from an article from an environmental group that's in the article, referenced in the article, they are saying that anything that's mass manufactured can always have mass manufacturing defects. It's bound to happen. from smartphones, like you could refer to like whatever Samsung that was that started blowing up and catching on fire, to jet airplanes like the Boeing 737 Max or the 787 Dreamliner jetliner that were all recalled. Like the whole lot is recalled. So what I said in the article is, what do you do in the case of nuclear? That's the same thing they were saying in the environmental article. You'd hope that there wouldn't be that kind of mass production mistake when it comes to a nuclear reactor.
You would hope, but that's where like the checks and like all the manufacturer GMPs, as they call them, good manufacturing practices, come into play. I don't know what that looks like for nuclear, but let's just hope Daryl's not tired when he's inspecting. You know what I mean? It's one of those. Let's just hope everybody does their job and all the right.
Instead of using their oil sands they already have, they now they're going to end up using nuclear within the next decade. And another issue with these, a common issue, is that their steam engines end up malfunctioning and shutting down and not working anymore. And then they have to replace them. And that's not an easy task to do, so much so that there's 2 in the States that just got shut down completely because it just wasn't worth it to replace them.
Just poor hindsight, it sounds like. So it's unintended consequences of the design. We'll see what it looks like as they move forward here, but it has to make sense. I don't care what you want to put in. It has to make sense financially. That's your job, is to be responsible with the taxpayers' money and be financially responsible with that. But let's move on here. Grace Life Church, I know you've heard about it.
I did have one more thing for that.
Sorry, go ahead.
So with that, also the costs shown by the company don't reflect the actual costs that come with other companies or even their own model from NewScale. And it's kind of misleading from the company's end. A quote from the article I referenced in my article was, quote, "As a result, the total cost of a proposed project in Idaho using the NewScale design has already risen from around $3 billion USD in 2015 to $6.1 billion USD in 2020, long before any concrete had been even poured."
Yeah, it sounds like typical government intervention. It's like it got more expensive before we even did anything. How'd they do it? The government can. Oh, the government can.
All right, so Grace Life Church got basically Adamson barbecue today. Skelly. Let's start talking about this. This is Derek Sloan recording it live just recently. Talked with Pastor James Coates of Grace Life Church. The RCMP showed up, no papers provided about why they're doing it. No court order has been issued, but they just gated off the community and forced lawlessness on Alberta, it sounds like.
And us having a platform to be able to do things like this. And so we are here to be faithful to Christ. And as we take this stand and are in this stare now with AHS and even the RCMP, we realize that we're being given an opportunity to speak to the public and help them understand that they're at risk of losing their civil liberties for good. That if the people of Alberta and all of Canada do not stand up and take back what is rightfully theirs according to the charter, and I say that peacefully, to do so peacefully, there's a great concern that they will lose their liberties for good. And so we are here as a local church to be faithful to Christ, and insofar as our faithfulness has given us this opportunity to inform the public and demonstrate that COVID-19 is not the threat that it's being made out to be, we are here to serve our communities and our neighbors and help them understand that they need to return to life as normal.
Nope. So that's Pastor James Coates of Grace Life Church. So they showed up basically early morning is my understanding, and just gated it off. And I mean, if you hate the church, you should still not be okay with this. if you're fearful of COVID, you should still not be okay with this. No court order, right? Okay.
Mhm.
So Broderick, the government doesn't like you. You're doing stuff the government doesn't like. And you're still hearing it out in court, but the government doesn't like that you're doing it. And they just show up at your house and gate off your house. That okay with you?
No.
Okay. RCMP, boom, just shows up and starts gating off. Hey, no, your property's ours now. This is government seized. Are we okay with that? That's China. So I don't give a damn where you stand on the church. You could think he's, the worst type of Christian, or he's, whatever. He's a terrible human being and I hate the church and blah, 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 blah. And COVID's scary and we should all stay home and lock everything down. If you're that type, you should still not be okay with this. Because if you're okay with this, you're okay with an absolute lawless society. You're okay with a government that can overstep its bounds at any time without courts, without anything, just political motivation.
They trespassed rebel off the property.
They trespassed rebel media off the property, which wasn't even their property to trespass from. So the RCMP claimed the Grace Life Church property, and to the right side of that property where she was, is the other farmer's property. And they were telling this farmer that he was going to have to call them and ask for permission to access his fields. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? The RCMP will, just call us up and we'll help you out. Well, I know we're here with no warrant, no court order. We just set up all this stuff and just gate it off, and it's also on your property, but you're going to have to call us if you want to use your property.
Yes, Craig,
that's Canada right now.
They fenced off the whole area around the church.
They double fenced it off.
You know what I find funky about that is, they can take the church. I mean, they shouldn't be allowed to. This is totally wrong. They can take that church though, and they can just find another building to worship in. They can find another building to gather, and it doesn't stop them. You think that's going to stop them from finding another building or a church to go to and gather? No.
I hope it does.
Are they going to do arrest the pastor again? Maybe. Hopefully not. I really hope not, for that man's sake.
Do you want to know what's happening? In my opinion, Grace Life Church, 15,000 foot view. How would people in history look back at what's happening today to Grace Life Church? Grace Life Church today is literally, they've gotten so much attention that they've embarrassed the government. Okay, they were on Tucker, or his wife was on Tucker. This story went around the world. I mean, it's been reported in Europe. It's been reported in America. It went viral. And I don't think they like that. And when I said like that whole hammer and the nail concept, Grace Life Church is a big nail right now. And they said, heck no. I don't give a damn if the court won't give me a court order. I don't care. Put the fence around. These guys aren't going to make us look bad. We're locking, right? We have control, not them. Right? When people start getting attention, they get a crowd behind them and people go, wait, hey, they're brave. I can speak my truth. I hate that term, but I'll speak up now, right? Because somebody else took the beating. I'll speak up. I'll stand behind them. So then what the government does, in my estimation, if I was looking at history, they're just coming along and they say, no. They're getting way too popular. I know the people aren't happy, but at least they're not talking about it right now. We got to ensure that they don't talk about it. And these people are going to ensure that they do talk about it. The more attention that we're going to hammer them so hard that people are fearful to be doing anything like that. And I view Adam Skelly Barbecue as the same thing. They had a restaurant open. They publicized the heck out of it. And then they came along and they put on a big show of force to show, this is what happens when you mess with the government. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah. Macho Man Randy Savage. But that's what they do. And they put on a big show and everyone went, oh, that's scary. I don't want to open my business. They might do that to me. And I think that's what's going on. That's the 10,000 foot view of the history that's unfolding right now. In Grace Life Church, this guy just stood up because he goes, it's against what I believe. I'm a Christian. I'm supposed to be serving God, and I believe I'm supposed to have people in church to do that. Tell me how you take communion online. Yeah, you don't. That's supposed to be a regular part of church, right? So it's all these things. They don't care. So I just think he angered them so much that they had to respond, and this is their response. 26 cops and locked the doors.
The viral of this story is crazy, because I was even Saturday I went to get some shawarma downtown Kitchener, kind of. And on the TV in there is a news report. I forget from who. I think it was like CP24 or something. They're reporting on it. Like every news, even the mainstream media is reporting on this, but in another sense to make them look bad. The difference.
You know, like, I've said this before. Like, I'm Christian, and I think about that quote. It's like what God, what the devil intends for evil, God intends for good. And I just think about the Grace Life situation. It's like so very clearly that, they're trying to do bad things to this pastor, and God just keeps churning it around against them. Like it's like, you guys got to stop. Stop. You don't know what you're doing. And it's just every time they do this, it backfires spectacularly. And the first time they jailed him. And I don't know if they thought he was going to cave, if they didn't think he was serious. Like when somebody says, no, I'm serving God first, and I'm willing to go to prison, and then you show up at court, do you think he was going to change his mind? Would you think a weekend he was going to change his mind when he got a taste of prison? Like, this guy was been the real deal from the start. So, I mean, it just keeps backfiring in their face. And they did the first time. We're like millions of views on the interview with his wife. And then millions of eyes have been tied to this story because of the way that they've handled it. But again, they're trying to make an example, in my estimation, of Grace Life Church. That's what's been going on. And I'm so disappointed. Like, it's one thing, like, if the government did these things, but where are all the Freedom Watch groups? Like, where are all the lawyers? Like, I know there's some good lawyers out there. They're doing some stuff, but I mean, my goodness, there should be more than a handful of people out there that I could name. I could probably name on both my hands, like, all the lawyers fighting these restrictions in Canada. That shouldn't be the case.
I think a lot of them are the silent majority. Fear of losing their job, fear of losing their professions in general. Like, I heard it was from PragerU. It was a guy who worked in the film industry in Hollywood. He was one of the very few conservative film industry people. He was making at first $500,000 deals, and then he ended up making multi-million-dollar deals. And he eventually just spoke up, and he quit, and he left, and God found another plan for his life, and he's doing well now. But it's just, I think people are just so scared to lose what they have, if little or big, that they're willing to just go along with it. Like, I know plenty of people I work with who are very quiet about it, but I like to prod people, as you do. You've kind of taught me that. Prod people in little ways when you bring up subject matter, to see where their kind of heads are at. And found out someone I work with closely does not believe it's crap.
If you do it right, they won't ever know that you were doing anything at all. It's just a conversation. Yeah. I think about this a lot. Like, you're right. People are afraid of losing everything. But I'm trying to think how I'm going to say this without. You're going to lose everything anyways. Not to sound like a Debbie Downer, and I don't mean maybe figuratively, like you don't lose your job, but if you're talking about your quality of life and your job, your career, and just the general direct, like, you're just basically deferring the problem by saying, I don't want to deal with it today. My career's too important, because it's a culture issue. It's a culture issue. It's a this is a culture issue because people are not willing to speak up. That's by very definition, that's a culture issue. It needs to change. And so people just keep deferring the problem. They go, I don't want to deal with it. I got to keep my job. And they keep playing, and they toe the line, and then they just change the goalpost. This is what happens all the time. So you might, again, we're watching the economy be destroyed. So if you're worried about your job, your career, your livelihood, your lifestyle, you need to speak up now, because you can't have it both ways. We're in the mess we're in because we've remained passive. And it's because they gaslight people. When people come out and they speak against the narrative, they gaslight them. Oh, you're this, you're that, you're a conspiracy theorist, you hate grandmas, and you want to kill them. And it's like they start coming out with this crazy narrative so people don't speak up. Exactly.
By the way, to Nicole, she asked earlier about the lockdown. It's all only essential goods in grocery stores, including big box stores like Walmart, Costco.
Curbside pickup only.
If you need to get anything that's non-essential tonight, then drive on out to your local Walmart. Costco.
So how's it make any sense? Oh, you can't get it from Walmart or the big box store. Pats on the backs, every politician says. Okay, order it from Amazon.
Amazon paid out the Ontario government.
Well, you can still order it online, but it's just like
it takes longer through Walmart, so most people would go for Amazon.
Well, here's the other thing. Are businesses supposed to stay open to lose money? Because you just reduced half of what they could sell.
Mm-hmm.
It's like no, and
traffic flow at all times.
Yeah, there's such an ignorance, though. I think that's one of the things that politicians have capitalized on. There is such an ignorance among the general population of what it takes to run a business. I can only say, like, my goodness, looking at getting into business, all the taxes that come into play, like it's, and then this is an example of the gaslighting. Oh, he doesn't pay taxes. He like Trump, they did this to him. He tries to hide his money so he doesn't have to pay taxes. You would too, because you're still paying taxes. Oh, you didn't pay income taxes. Well, you're talking like hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, yeah, but they also employ people, and then you pay taxes on every good you purchase. Every employee you hire, there's taxes involved with. Every sale you make, there's taxes involved with. So it's like, they come after and they gaslight these people for trying to save the money they earned. Right? I don't have any problem with a flat tax rate or something like that, because that would actually get rid of those loopholes. But it's astronomical. There's a multi-millionaire. I can't remember his name. Grant Cardone, I think is his name. And he's talking about the tax code. And he goes, I had a huge tax bill. I owed millions. So you know what I did? Tax guy goes, there's nothing you can do. He goes, well, there's always something you can do. So he starts looking through the tax code, and he goes, that's the one. I'm buying a jet. Calls up the company. Well, we don't have a jet. We can't get it for 2 years. He calls the accounting department. He goes, hey, I just sent you $60 million for a jet. Can you find me one? So long story short, they find him one. But the point of that is, now he doesn't have to pay taxes because he wrote off the jet. So he bought a private jet. Why? Just so he didn't have to pay taxes. And I would have done the same thing. And anyone else, I'm okay with paying a flat rate on taxes, but you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And you get involved in business, it's like, okay, you pay income tax, and then my business, I have to pay tax on my business, then I get paid, then I pay an income tax on that. And then all my employees, I have to pay tax on theirs before they even get it, that they pay tax on. And then every good you purchase has tax on it. Every gas, like your shipping stuff, there's tax on that. It's insane. Tell me that's a business-friendly environment, that they care. It's amazing to me that there is as many business people as there is in Canada, just for the amount of asinine things that you have to deal with. Worked myself to death running my own business. Lost it last year due not to making enough to pay taxes, and because the city of Toronto decided to shut down the street in front of my business. Sorry to hear about that. For 3 months, gave me 2 weeks notice, and I had no help to pay my $5,000 monthly rent. Would have lost it to COVID anyways. Well, maybe that's a blessing in disguise, I guess. Saved you from sinking in more debt, I guess. I'm sorry to hear that. This is examples of things government does, and they don't seem to care. People get tossed by the wayside. What else we got here? The case numbers are fraudulent. They cranked up the cycle threshold again in the PCR. So I'm not sure if they have cranked it up, but when we released our report months and months ago, 40 cycles in Ontario, 33 to 45 across Canada. I got another. Is it this one? No. Where'd it go? I want to show something here because it's Randy Hilly has been posting about some businesses opening. I want to plug this for anyone in the Ottawa, Kemptville area. There's going to be some businesses open that are going to be looking for support. So if you are in the area, come out to Kemptville. That is tomorrow night at 7 p.m., 15 Clothier Street, West Kemptville, Ontario, at the South Branch Bistro. They will be opening up in rejection of Ford's unlawful lockdowns, Hillier says, as well as FRST, First Fitness in Ottawa at 1408 Bank Street will be opening. starting April 8th at 11 a.m. without restrictions. So these stories are popping up all over Canada now. Businesses have had enough, and I keep saying this, but they've basically been presented. This is the scenario: shut down your business and lose everything, or open up and I will threaten to take everything. There's your Canadian government in a nutshell right now. It's absolutely unbelievable, and it's disgusting. Larry, we're going to keep combing through the comments here. What do we got? Whoa. The mask? No. All right, we're back here. All right, so I think it's probably a good place to close up unless you want to talk about something else. But you're looking at Cortland this weekend and Simcoe, right?
I'm hoping to be able to I got to contact the business owner in Cortland, but I don't have it on top of my head. There is a business opening up in Cortland who will be open from, I think she opened today or she's opening tomorrow. And they've listed her hours up till Sunday, but I think she's staying open regardless until whatever happens. So I'm hoping to be able to cover a Simcoe protest that's happening this Saturday, and then pop in over to Cortland before I head home to cover that.
And I am looking at Niagara on Saturday. There's supposed to be one out there. So we're going to be all over the place. We've ordered more equipment. We got a professional gimbal coming for the phone, so the quality is going to improve for the live streams.
Fingers crossed we have a new iPhone.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I'll have my new iPhone for that as well. So battery life increased. But we will be going out to a bunch of those rallies and businesses opening this weekend, and we're going to be keeping an eye on that because there's a bunch more that are planning on opening. I think we're at a threshold here, and something's changed, and people are starting to speak up. I got that vibe in Leamington. There's just so many people just honking, supporting, and just a general feeling like enough, like a lot. And I heard those conversations of like, you've had a full year, right? And people have just reached that point. Like even people that within the family that weren't on board, and now they've started questioning things. Like enough time's gone on where even the people that were like, no, like they're doing a good job and they're doing their best, there's something that changed, and that changed, and they're shifting now and asking questions. So right now you're going to have the diehards on the pro lockdown side, but it's like politics. The extremes are the minority. They fall by the wayside. It's not the majority of people, especially not anymore. And I think Leamington was a perfect example of that.
I only got one issue for Saturdays that I got less than a gigabyte of data left.
Oh, we might have to pay for the upgrade.
So either that or I'll just do on the ground coverage and upload later. But we'll see. We'll see how much it actually costs for another gig or two. I think
it's like 10 or 15 bucks an add-on. It's not cheap. Yeah, PCR test is the perfect tool. Yeah, it's the perfect tool if the goal is to ramp up false positives. You know, just for second here, 10 million residents tested Wuhan, China. Just, you know, I like to remind people of things I've mentioned a bunch of times before, but this article is like Paul talks about it all the time, our other correspondent. He's like, well, like you can't have it both ways. You can't reference China and be like lockdowns work, and that's why we're going with the China model, and then at the same time turn around and be like, well, we're not going to reference their articles or their medical papers because we don't trust them. Like you can't do that. So
pick and choose what they want, right?
Yeah. So if you go in here, this is the title of it. You can look it up yourself, everyone. Post-lockdown SARS-CoV-2 nucleic acid in nearly 10 million residents of Wuhan, China. So they tested 10 million residents with the PCR test, and 300 were positive asymptomatically with no symptoms. And then they sent them off to a lab to see if they were actually infectious. So Control F, viable, you'll find it. Virus cultures were negative for all asymptomatic positive and re-positive cases. Meaning if you had COVID and you tested positive for it after you'd gotten over it, they also had no positive cases. So indicating no viable virus in the positive cases detected in this study. So like 9,700,000 and change. Is that enough for people? So this whole mask thing stems from this of asymptomatic transmission. You can spread it, and yeah, it's got to stop. 10 million residents, 300 were asymptomatic and tested positive according to the PCR test. And then you send it off to a lab and 0 were infectious. We've told people they can't spend time with family. How about we just tell them to be hyper aware of symptoms? That would be a better approach than the government telling you not to do anything at all. But
like every other flu season before.
yeah, maybe be a little more hypersensitive. You got a tickle in your throat, stay home. Don't wait a day after. Like, I guess like that would have been a heck of a lot more reasonable approach. I think people might even heeded some of the advice they'd have to say if they were that reasonable. But when it's lockdowns and that's the only answer, and it's like, oh, the NHL can play, but your kid can't, that's dangerous. Oh, Costco's safe to have 1,100 people in it, but that mom and pop shop can't even have their doors open. Yeah, it's all those logical inconsistencies, and I think that's what woke people up. You can't really keep people's trust that way.
It's really just the money they're looking at. The taxes that they make from the NHL is more than they'll make from minor league hockey, if anything.
Maybe. I don't even think it's that. I think it's the NHL paid somebody who was on the science table, which is actually disclosed. Sure. I'm not just saying that. They paid him consultants, and they said, go get him, Tiger. Tell him how important it is. And he went in there and said, yeah.
Same idea for Costco, Walmart.
Yeah. I mean, they can afford lobbyists. I mean, the joke is that our politicians are for sale, but the citizens can't make the purchase. Right? Mm-hmm. Somebody always makes the purchase. It just usually isn't the citizenry that can actually afford it. So it sounds bad, but like when you find out that you have Walmart reps that have been lobbying the Premier Ford government, and then they give special like all these things that have been going on, it's like the writing's out there. You just got to actually pay attention to it. All right. I think that's a good place to close off for tonight. Sunday show. Sorry. Wow. 3 p.m. Eastern. Tune in Sundays with our other correspondent, Paul Staley, and myself. Be going through the news cycle, everything that's been going through, the news that's not getting talked about, and we try to dig into medical literature and just various things that aren't getting covered the way they deserve. So tune in Sunday at 3. And if you want to support Diverge Media, go to divergemedia.ca. We take donations as well as we have merch for sale. We have bumper magnets on the way, but for now it's just hats. So you can make that purchase at divergemedia.ca. But thank you everybody for tuning in, and look for us this weekend. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification, because we are going to be likely all over the province in the next couple of months here. So thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm Greg Staley signing off.
And I'm Broderick Visser. Have a good night, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.